John and Deb here at Vinnovate down the side with Bryan, and we're going to talk about a little bit about wine stuff today, because a lot of the people who read and follow us and all of that, they're going to know some things about wine, but some people don't, and it's always fun to have refreshers about how things go, from an agricultural thing to this and that, and for people who really pay attention to the soil, to the vineyard, to what's really going on, and that's been your thing for a long time. What we were just talking about, just real quick, because we're going to get into aromas and all of that. We were walking in the cellar today and talking about the smells, because here we are, it is December, things are kind of gone to bed for harvest, things are sitting here, some barrel samples of some wine doing its thing, kind of going to bed for the long sleep.
Yep.
But it's that smell that actually got me started in the wine and the food world. It started when I was 5.
That's great. Good jump start.
Walking into mom and dad down to Christian Brothers, so that'll tell you how old I am.
Yep.
On a cold stone bench watching a black and white film. Cello chef, probably Andre was in it, I'm gonna say. But that smell, that red wine, that ferment, that smell when you come into the cellar that time of year, you're like, that's it. And little did they know, it was imprinting upon me forever.
And here we are today.
So, like I said, we're at Vinnovate Wine Services, where a lot of magic happens.
Yeah. So Vinnovate Wine Services is basically the sister to Ambar Estate. Rob and Pam were the ones who invested in Vinnovate. So we make the wines here for Ambar, which is just up the road from us here on Warden Hill. They're 15-acre vineyards a minute away. So the fruit comes here almost immediately from the vineyard and gets processed here. So as you guys know, Ambar is a really diverse vineyard. It's a really special place here in the backside of the Dundee Hills, where there's not a ton of plantable acreage like the other side by the city. So it's this little microclimate that we have back here within the Dundee Hills. So Ambar has some great climate that happens back here with a little bit less rain, but also the soils that you mentioned. We obviously have a good chunk of the Jory soil, which is the red hills of Dundee. That's why it's named that. It gets really red when it's wet, a lot of iron oxide in it. So most of the Ambar vineyard would be that Jory soil, but there's also some subsets and complexes within the vineyard in different pockets. So we've planted that based on the soils and the aspects. And as well, on top of the different soil types, we have different clones and different rootstocks based on where it's at. And that really gives us the spice box, if you will, from the vineyard. So we pick all these individual blocks separately. We may pick a couple on the same day if they're ready, but sometimes we may only pick one, just depends on the vintage. And so throughout about a 2 or 3 week period, we're kind of picking every few days and getting it when it's right. Especially in 2024 this year, we had a great vintage, kind of a winemaker's vintage, where there was a little bit of rain here and there, nothing that's unusual for harvest, but it was cool and it let the fruit hang. So we were really able to get the grapes off the vines at the right time. We didn't have to, worry about, there was a huge rain event for 3 days. We got to pick it all. It was a little bit of rain, wait a couple days, pick, wait a couple more days for the next blocks to be right. And so we're able to bring those the fruit bins into the Vinnovate to be able to ferment and do all the aging. So great vineyard to start with, and a great vintage, of course. So as a winemaker, our job's not to screw it up, right? Get it through the process soundly. We do add some barrels, we do some fermentation techniques, but in general, when we have a vintage like this, it's just really, really epic to be able to bring it in here.
Bring it in, get out of the way.
Absolutely.
Let her do her thing.
Yeah.
It's so great what you're talking about too, that again, this is an agricultural product. I mean, all the way down to we're looking at barrels made from trees. It's about the soil, it's about the vines, about what happened. And to have a year like this, not that freeze in April like that one year, not that smoke like that 1 year.
There's always that 1 year in Oregon. Every year is so different, but yes.
And you are no stranger to the Dundee Hills and the things that places that you've worked in, the vineyards that you've worked with. And, seeing all that and how it goes forward, and for us, and for those of you out there who've tasted the Ambar wines and some of the other wines that Bryan's had his hand in, and knowing that, it's so clear your passion for it and your knowledge of it and you're working with it and exactly those things, knowing when to get out of the way and when there and how to do it. And of course, it's nice to have that vineyard a minute up the street and just like, let's go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we celebrate the fact that we have vintage variability here in Oregon. We may have wet vintages, warm vintages, moderate, unfortunately some smoke vintage, which hopefully never again. But we do know how to work with these vintages because we're always having to experiment and be on kind of the edge of what can happen with the wines and how do we take them to the next level is that experimentation but also that experience of these certain vintages that may not be exactly the same but had similar characteristics in terms of the climate and what we saw. So understanding what you can and can't do with wine comes with experience, of course, and through mentorship and just learning. So over half my career has been on this hill right here, and it's been great to be making wines. I think it's going to be 22 years coming up of making wine, but I think 13 of those are here on the hill, which is great. And I live in Dundee, so Dundee is my little home. I just kind of come back and forth between Dundee and the winery and the tasting room. But it's a special place back here. I mean, it's the second smallest AVA, but yet it's really one that's pretty interesting because it is this hill. It's a pretty big, kind of almost like a mountain, but it's considered a hill because it's not that tall, but it kind of goes up to the peak, which is at the top of Warden Hill, not too far from here. And so you get a lot of these little microclimates, like I said, all the way around it, and all very consistently high quality, typically from the Dundee Hills, all the way from 200 to 1,000 foot elevation. So a really special pocket, and for sure this backside I really like too, because you start getting away from just 100% Jory soil and you start seeing a little bit of sedimentary soil because we're right next to Ribbon Ridge and Yamhill Carlton. So where our vineyard is here at Venovate, we get a little bit of a combo. Rob's has a little bit at the lower section at Ambar as well, and that just gives us a lot more potential for blending later on after they've aged.
And it's so great. It reminds me of something, and I think you talked about it, in the interview we did a couple weeks ago up at the tasting room. You talk about, especially Dundee Hills, and all of it here. I mean, you got to get down to that Missoula flood situation. I'm like, that's why we find, weird things.
Erratic rocks and things that came and,
I'm like, how's the land cracked and came out? Like, why do I have marine sediment and snails? I'm like, well, because it, it made some weird moves that created what we call these hills. And locked the beach in down the valley.
No, exactly. You got the Missoula floods, you got this, uplifted marine sedimentary, you got the, volcanics from not only the coastal but the Columbia Valley Basin. So I think there's a lot of things happening, especially right here in this hub.
Yeah.
And it's just great to work with because each of them brings this intrinsic quality to the wine that maybe the other one doesn't have. And so when you put them together, I love that. But I also like the focus sometimes when it's only Jory soil and the velvety textures you get. And so for different wines and different SKUs, it makes sense to do different blends.
When was the vineyard planted?
So at Ambar, the vineyard was planted about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And it was all dry farmed, originally established. It was all non-irrigated, so like I said, dry farmed. It is now regenerative organic certified. It was the first one in the Willamette Valley, which we're very proud of because we talk a lot about the fruit, the vineyard, the soils, and we'll talk about the wine in a minute, but the regenerative organic certification also talks a lot about social fairness.
Yes.
No-till, cover crop management, as well as animal husbandry, having sheep, goats, sometimes in the vineyard, clearing invasive species, but also taking care of the vineyard workers and paying livable wages. So super important. And so, like I said, we're the first one to be certified here in the Willamette Valley, but now the regenerative kind of push is really starting to really spread.
Yeah.
And Oregon does a great job with sustainability, as we already know, through organics, biodynamics, live certification, which are very important. And they all grab onto it and take it to the next level. I think regenerative organics is going to be the next step with Oregon.
I couldn't agree more, and we read a lot, especially for us, those of us in this funnel, with this lens and this filter on this side of the news, if you want to call it that. But Oregon truly is leading the way with some of these things, and have been, like you talked about, whether it was Salmon Safe and Live and Lead from a long time ago. but still there. And, of course, those bigger companies try to find ways to, use these things, and we have to continue to keep moving the chains down the field.
Sure.
How we do it, and really, it's all just simply a return back to the way things were and the way they should have been.
Right. No, and making the vineyard more healthy and the people more, taken care of and socially fair. But I think the big thing with Oregon, we may only be a couple percentage of the entire nation's production, because you can't plant large parcels here in the valley, really. There are some lower level sections that maybe are not as high quality sections to plant on the flatlands, but yet when you start getting into the hills where most of these vineyards are planted, it's just you can't plant 100 plus acre vineyards very, very commonly. There are some, but most of these are these boutique vineyards that are 10 to 40 acres, right? And so we have small growers, family mostly, but now seeing more corporate come in as well. But there's a lot of collaboration here in the valley, which is also really special, I think, and why we're able to take some of these new certifications or new ideas on farming or taking care of the vineyard and be able to take it to the next level, because people are sharing, and there's no secrets per se. I could give you the entire way we make wine, how we farm, and every parcel is different. Every wine's going to come out different at the end of it. So why not share that knowledge to try to help Oregon and try to help even outside of Oregon people try to take it to the next level for quality and for these certifications.
And I was going to say, in our very first edition, we interviewed Bree Stock, and she was the first person I heard that said exactly what you just said. She was the first I heard it, and it was all about sharing and community and caring, and it's not like, it's not a closed in, don't come see what we're doing kind of a thing, which I think is wonderful, because, it's nature and it belongs to everybody, and, so, but it does make wine drinkers learn how to be a little bit more discriminating, say, oh, I want this clone, or I want, this other grape entirely, because they know how the experience is going to be.
Yep. Yep. As you can hear, it's a working winery, so although it's December and the barrels are resting nicely through their aging, we are still making wine and keeping things clean. But yeah, great community, really special place. I grew up here in Oregon, went to culinary school where I ended up doing a food and wine pairing class and found this beautiful product. And I think as everybody catches the bug at different times, 5 years old for you, 21 years old for me, it's been fun to be a part of the industry for so long and have that collaboration and the friendships and the family, if you will, of the Oregon wine industry.
Yeah.
So it's great, and that's, as we are here at Vinnovate, it's not just Ambar here. You've got some different people, like you said, from to the north, and way to the north. Those guys that did run into some issues for weather. That's like, can you work on it down there?
Yeah, no,
and do the magic.
Exactly. We're able to collaborate here at Vinnovate, and that's why I think this is such a great spot. We focus on about 10 different brands here, and we do a lot of sparkling and still winemaking, and we have a lot of equipment and staff and things to do it right and to do very different, styles of wine and different varietals of wine. But also we're able to service, not just from the grape to the bottle, do some partial services in sparkling and still. And we had the unique opportunity this year. Unfortunately, the Okanagan Valley had a hard freeze. Yeah. It took a lot of their vines and completely nuked the buds, and there wasn't going to be any fruit available this year, and it potentially could be for another couple years, just the way it works for the vine to regrow. And so we were able to sell some excess fruit that the Willamette Valley had this year to the Okanagan wineries that were struggling to have any fruit to make wine, to keep their employees employed.
Keep the lights on.
Keep the lights on, literally. And so we did a lot of sending juice up to them or fermenting partially here and then sending that up there. And it was a great collaboration. It was a lot because it over doubled our production this year in terms of tonnage. But I think that's also what Oregon's about. Is it's not just about Oregon, it's about the wine industry as a whole too. And when somebody's down, maybe help them out. And I think, we would hope the same if it ever happened here.
100%.
Which I don't think we're going to get to the negative degrees that they saw for 3 or 4 days, hopefully. But although I wear shorts most every day, that one might be a take for pants.
even as the snow starts to come in.
That's right.
Up here on the hill.
It always does. We always get a pretty good amount of snow in the kind of into December, January, sometimes February up here.
I saw an April one here.
Yeah, as well.
Let's talk a little bit about what's in the glass, if you want to jump in a little bit.
Yeah, so we currently have some 2023 Pinot Noirs in barrel that are getting bottled here in a few months, but this one I pulled, beautiful color. This is from 2024. So this wine is still going through malolactic fermentation, so it's not quite done and not quite in its resting state, but we keep the cellar fairly cool. It's insulated building, but we don't heat too much. We just kind of keep things so that the wine slowly finishes malolactic, and then it'll age for quite a while. So we have these grapes that come in very shallow bins, so we're not compacting the grapes, not breaking berries. We actually chill the fruit down, even though that fruit gets to us by sometimes 8:30, 9 o'clock because it's so close. We'll overnight chill the fruit just so it distims that much better, so that we can keep the whole berry. Whole berry for me is really important in Pinot Noir because Pinot Noir isn't as big as like a big Cabernet or something like that, but it has a lot of potential for extraction and tannin and structure.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So when you break that skin, you've just opened up the potential for more extraction of the phenolics, the color, and for sure the tannin, and it can almost get too much. It can be almost to the bitter side of phenolics. So for us, the whole berry is kind of the start of that, trying to minimize over extracting these wines because we want to keep them on skins all the way till they're done with fermentation, extract good color, aromas, flavors, but not get that big tannin at the end where the tannin really starts to extract when there's alcohol in the wine. So we'll bring it in, we cool it down for overnight, and then we put it through the processing line, which includes cluster sorting. So we take material other than grape, we call it MOG. So anything but the grape. So we'll see leaves, any little ladybugs or things that came out, we can sort out. I've even seen a glove from a vineyard worker one time. But normally it's just sorting out the fruit. And if we have a year that's a little tough, we'll sort out any fruit that has any signs of infection from rot or anything. But this year was really clean. But no matter what, we sort the clusters, we go through the destemming process, and then we actually sort the berries again. So any little bits of stem or any little bits of leaf that had made it through, we'll go ahead and pull that out before it goes into the fermentation tank. What we're here at Venovate is we're set up for small family-owned wineries that want to do smaller fermentation size. We're not fermenting 5, 10, 20 tons in the same tank. We're fermenting 2, 3, and 4 ton tanks. Those are the biggest tanks we have for red wine fermentation. So we put them into the tank. We actually chill the grapes down for about 4 days, called the cold soak period, right? We'll chill it. We'll keep it macerated in terms of the juice. We'll pump it over a little bit just to keep it so the top's not dry. And just let it sit. There's no fermentation. That temperature, about 40 degrees, inhibits any of the yeast that have come in from the grapes or that are in the winery from starting that fermentation. After that 4 days, we'll actually warm the Pinot Noir grapes up, basically the must, and then it'll get up to about 60 degrees. And by that point, you'll start to see some of the native yeast start to take off. So then we're kind of in active fermentation, which is typically about 10 to 12, sometimes 14 days, depending on the ferment. We come in from the vineyard with really good nutrients because we're using grazing animals that, deposit great nutrients. We're working with cover crops that have a lot of nitrogen fixing agents. So the yeast that are fermenting don't really need any additions of too many nutrients typically, or any additions to really try to make them finish their fermentation cleanly and to actually finish the fermentation. So we really just are monitoring at that point. We're smelling and tasting every day. We're either punching down the skins or pumping it over to do the cap management once or twice a day typically. And then after that fermentation, which the entire from the destemming till we press off, it's about 14 plus or minus a few days, and we'll actually drain the free run out of the tank, which is basically anything that'll drain without having to press it. We'll keep that separate and put it into the barrels. We also do a little bit of a light pressing. We don't heavy press anything here because that's where you start getting a lot of that tannin. And you put a couple gallons of that real heavy press into 10, 15 gallons of the other stuff, you just kind of ruin the other stuff. So light pressings are kept separate and ability to blend them back later. Once we've pressed, we go to barrel, which we're in the barrel room, one of 4 of them we have here, standing next to all the Ambars. And we use, for Pinot Noir, at least for us, we use all French oak. only about 25 to 40% new depending on the SKU. So French oak is a lot more delicate, obviously. It doesn't overpower the Pinot Noir. It lets the Pinot Noir show its fruit. And within the French oak forest, we use typically Allier is a big portion of the barrel cooperages I use in my Pinots because it's some of the tightest grain forest in France. Within that is Trancé, which is also very tight grain and highly prized. So you'll see a lot of these that will have Allier, Trancé barrel designations. So we get some really good wood from some great forests. And then on top of that, we pull from about 15 different cooperages for our clients. Ambar has probably about 8 or 10 total, but within the Pinot, we use about 8. And we use pretty low toasted barrels too. So you're never going to see a wine barrel that looks like a Jack Daniel's whiskey barrel that's completely charred, right? It almost looks the same on the outside as it does on the inside because the inside is very low temperature, long toast time. So you'll see a lot of these are like medium toast or medium light toast. You're never going to see too many medium plus or heavy toast. It can be done for Pinot and it's fine. Stylistically though, for us, we like a little bit of the oak to be a little bit more in the background.
We're a little farther north than those guys.
Yes, and you know, and let the wine show. I want this wine to smell and taste like fruit and grapes and where the wine came from. So hopefully not overpowering it, but just making it better and really rounding it out, if you will. So it finishes in the barrels for anywhere from about 11 to 14 months, depending on the SKU. And then we'll go to bottling, and then usually in bottle for about 6 to 12 months before release.
I was going to ask about bottle time, let that take its next run.
Yeah, exactly. We let it settle, give it some time in the bottle, and then get to share it with our guests. And we're really, you know, winemaking's pretty easy. It's like I said, just there's a little bit of how can we make it better and elevate it. And I think through great mentorship over my career and stuff, we know how to make great wine in Oregon, but how do we make some of the best in the world? And I think we're continuing to evolve and get better. And we are making some of the best wines in the world. But yet we never want to be stagnant and just sit and rest on our laurels. So how do we get better? It's those little tweaks, the 1 or 2% of things that we can do better through experimentation, through talking to neighbors and other wineries. That's how we make these wines better and better every year, hopefully until someday we retire, if that's a thing in winemaking.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody ever fully retires from winemaking. They say they do, but
They say they do.
yeah. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at though. So we're right in the middle of malolactic. Once it gets finished with that, it'll age for another year or so.
Wow, cool. It's fantastic. You just dropped a knowledge bomb, man.
That's fun. You want to start talking wine chemistry and really nerd it up? We can spend a couple hours on just tannins and anthocyanins.
Don't get a degree from Davis after having this conversation or watching this.
Go Beavers, Oregon State.
Yeah, that's it.
But yeah, it's a lot of science, but you have that science background and hopefully some great experiences at small, large wineries to know what you can and can't do with wine. Because like I said, don't screw it up, because wine wants to be vinegar, right? It's somewhere between fruit and vinegar, and we're trying to keep it fresh and lively and not heading down that path. So we really, the science background, biology and chemistry and agriculture and all the stuff we learn in, enology viticulture school really allows us for that art side of it, the artistic side of it, which is having fun, playing with some whole cluster, playing with the native yeast, doing different barrels and things that are more stylistic choices and less science-based and carbonics, things like that. So it's always good to have a great balance. And that was the one thing that really drew it to me is you get to do a lot of different things. It's food, it's biology and chemistry and lab work, and then it's also farming and doing manual labor in a winery, and tasting wine doesn't suck. My mom, when I said I was going to do this, she thinks this is all I would do, just taste wine as a winemaker, right? This is 0.5% or less of what we do in a day or day. Like, this is the fun part, and enjoying it with the guests is also a really fun part.
And a lot too in the wine world, because I've had feet in both food and wine for so long. It's a lot of what it is in the culinary world, and everybody thinks they want to go be this and do this, and I'm like, about less than 5% of it is actually getting it on the plate and putting it out there.
That's
the rest
right.
of it's cleaning stuff,
That is
prepping
winemaking.
stuff, and cleaning stuff.
Yes.
I'm like, that is most of it. Yeah.
The night of service is fast and busy, just like harvest.
That's it.
But there's a lot of pre-planning and prep that goes into that. So same here. Although people always say, "Oh, you're done with harvest, you must not have a lot going on." There's always something going on.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Wow.
Always.
Thank you for all of that.
I appreciate you guys coming out to see where the wines are made and get to try some beautiful 24s. We look forward to sharing these with our customers in another couple years. So it's an exciting time.
Well, and thank you for sharing your time, to Bryan, and for everybody here, because Ambar is important to us, and we knew that going in from when we first met Rob and the whole thing, and as our relationship with the magazine and with you guys has started, and it's going on, and even our personal relationship with you guys.
Sure.
Just seeing how this goes, and for us, it's so wonderful to be able to kind of keep going with you guys, like on through the seasons. Like we may do this again a little while longer and
You're
say,
always
hey,
welcome.
let's just see where we're on this thing, because that's one thing I think it's important for people to see.
Yeah.
And it's one thing how I learned a lot was go to that same place in the vineyard 4 times throughout the year and see what's
Once a
there,
season.
see what's going on, and then when I was a Cooper rep, being here in this was my office. Tasting through those like you guys do, and it's seeing where that goes to knowing what's going to happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. Is like when you get to see the same style from the winemaker, and each vintage we may do slightly different style, but the same vineyard, same winemaker, same facility. You've taken a lot of variables out, right? So you really get to see what that vintage held and how these wines evolve over the time that they age. And I spent 11 years at my previous winery, 5 at the previous one. So getting that repetition with similar vineyards and similar facility and stuff really helps you to understand the winemaking and, each what the vintage has given us. So it's fun to watch.
I'm not going to see the beer guys have it easier because we're in a much more craft beer world, but they get to fix mistakes or some
They
issues.
can do it again tomorrow.
They can do it tomorrow. One shot once a year.
We did. We've spent a year in the vineyard and a year in the winery, and that's why the details are so important. And although it does take a lot of beer to make wine, as the saying goes, of course we love what we do in the wine industry and getting to share that with people because we work so hard for that.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. Good to spend the time.
Thank you guys for
Great info.
watching and enjoying. We're going to spend more time throughout the year, as we said. You'll see Bryan again. I know you got some stuff to do. So
Cheers.
thank
you guys.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers. Remember, peas and water, y'all.